how good was Riddick Bowe actually? Now, the reason why I'm making this video is a lot of people, they really underrate Riddick Bowe. Now, I'm not saying that he's a top 3 heavyweight of all time. Like, a lot of people say about Mike Tyson or Lewis or Holyfield, none of those guys are in the top 3 in my opinion. They're incredible heavyweights, some of the best ever, but not top 3. Now, Riddick Bowe was a professional heavyweight during the 90s. Now, he was a pretty good amateur, came second in the Olympics, won a silver medal, losing to Lennox Lewis in that fight. It was a controversial stoppage. In my opinion, Bowe was winning that fight. But you know what? He lost the final. And, Bowe lost, but he came back as a pro and he went undefeated in many fights, beating the Journeyman and what have you. But he was beating these guys like Tyrell Biggs, former Tyson conqueror, a man who was an Olympic gold medalist himself. And Bowe took care of him in emphatic fashion. And, this showed, the world that Bowe was, an up-and-coming contender, because Biggs was a pretty decent fighter. And, he even, right there, as you guys can see, on a knockout win against the future heavyweight champ, Bruce Seldon. Riddick Bowe destroyed him. And Riddick Bowe is best known, he had some great fights in the 90s, I'm going to be honest, but the one that Riddick Bowe is most known for was the one after he fought Pierre Cotta, and that was the fight against Evander the Real Deal Holyfield. Now, a lot of people like to say a lot of things about Bowe, but the only man to beat a prime Evander Holyfield was Riddick Bowe, and he beat him in beautiful fashion, He beat him for the Undisputed Heavyweight Championship, the one that Holyfield had for a few years at that point. And Riddick Bowe managed to put on a great performance, take everything a prime Holyfield had, come back and win that fight. And, he was, to many, at that point considered one of the best fighters pound for pound in the world, in any weight class, because beating Holyfield in the way he did was, in my opinion, as good as they come. That's up there. A lot of people, I don't know what people will say in the comments or whatever, or what they might think about this video, but in my opinion, that Riddick Bowe win against Holyfield is up there with some of the best ever. Now, he's also, a lot of people hate on him because of, his title defenses. He first fought, an old past his prime Michael Dokes, but he still beat him. He knocked out Dokes in beautiful fashion, just like he did against, and way more dominant than he did against Holyfield in terms of he knocked Dokes out. But this was a way past his prime Dokes. But at the end of the day, this is his first title defense. He put on, a dominant knockout win. And then he fought Jesse the Boogeyman Ferguson, a man who had just beaten Ray Mercer. And Riddick Bowe starched him in, I believe the second round. And then he fought, a lot of other guys. He fought Holyfield in a rematch that he narrowly lost. In my opinion, Bowe won all 3 of the Holyfield fights. That's up for debate or whatever you guys want to do. But Riddick Bowe, in my opinion, won all 3 of those fights against Holyfield. Should have never lost his belt to Holyfield in that rematch. And, Bowe, he had a little downward spiral, not in a way, but he wouldn't get another crack at the Undisputed Heavyweight title throughout his career, but he would win the WBO Heavyweight Championship, beating Herbie Hide, and then he would make a defense against Jorge Luis Gonzalez, who was, a highly touted amateur who'd beaten Lewis and Bowe in the amateur games. And Bowe sparked him out. This is an undefeated heavyweight challenger. He was pretty highly touted, and Bowe sparked him out and put on arguably his second best performance in my opinion after the Holyfield first fight. And the last, what people like to say about Bowe is he ducked Lennox Lewis. He never wanted to fight Lewis. In my opinion, if that fight happened anywhere between 1992 and 1994, Bowe would have won that fight. And, in my opinion, a prime Bowe beats a prime Lennox Lewis. Like, I know prime Lennox Lewis was around 1998, 1999, but Riddick Bowe's prime was around 92, 93. And in my opinion, a prime Bowe beats a prime Lewis. And I don't know what you guys think about that, but in my opinion, he does. I think if they fought in 1995, if you think about it, in 95, Lewis had a very, very close fight with Ray Mercer, and this was a past his prime Ray Mercer, whereas Riddick Bowe had knocked out Holyfield, but then Riddick Bowe obviously went on to win DQ fights against Andrew Gallotta. But in my opinion, that was Bowe way overweight. And even the Bowe haters, the ones that come at him for not fighting Lewis, even those people can say that Bowe was not even close to what he used to be when he fought Gallotta. And if he did, he would have demolished Andrew Gallotta. And that's facts. But, a lot of people can say what they want. In my opinion, Riddick Bowe is one of the top heavyweights of his generation. And he will go down, in my opinion, as a top 15, maybe even top 12 heavyweight of all time. And in my opinion, the night he beat Holyfield, the first one, that Riddick Bowe, he beats almost any heavyweight in history, in my opinion, because of, he was a giant as well. And, his chin was pretty good as well up until, I think Holyfield was the first one to actually drop Riddick Bowe. And he dropped him pretty badly and maybe could have nearly won that third fight. But, Bowe showed why he was a top heavyweight. And, I think when you talk about the 1990s heavyweights, they are way, way more higher ranked than any of the heavyweights nowadays, other than maybe Fury and AJ. That's it. And, I think Riddick Bowe, if he was in this era, he would have beaten everybody. His at his prime in shape, he beats almost any heavyweight of all time. There's a few that I've got, like Foreman and Ali and, those guys. Yeah, they could probably beat Riddick Bowe. They could probably beat Lennox Lewis. They could beat, Mike Tyson. But, that's only a couple of heavyweights. There's so many heavyweight fighters, heavyweight legends that, in my opinion, Riddick Bowe would have beaten. And he would have beaten them pretty comfortably. I'm talking about his absolute prime. And that was around the time he fought Holyfield. That was around the time he defended his belts, So in my opinion, Riddick Bowe, I'll be honest, he is one of the most, a lot of people will call him underachieved. I'd probably say that's the word for him. One of the most underachieved heavyweights. In my opinion, he could have gone down as a top 5 all-time heavyweight if he fought a bit better competition, You know what? Way better competition, because he should have fought a lot more guys, He should have fought guys like Tyson and, he did fight Holyfield, but he should have fought Tyson and, Bruno and Tommy Morrison and all these guys. Tommy Morrison, that would have been a great fight for Riddick Bowe. But that fight never happened. And, how good you guys think Riddick Bowe was? In my opinion, he's an all-time great heavyweight. He deserves to be in at least the top 15. And on his best night, he could be any heavyweight of all time. So, thank you, everybody, for watching. And, peace.